Hello and welcome to Informed. I'm Randy Taylor. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. This show is focused on just that, to bring you experts to inform you on a wide range of topics from health to business, politics, relationships, and much more. Business today has the largest possible market than any other time in history. Access to anyone and everyone, both here in Canada and on a global scale as well, is unlimited. While it has created enormous opportunity, it's also filled the pond with millions of others competing for the attention of similar clients. The challenge for advertisers is not only where to spend their campaign dollars, but how to know if they are actually targeting those people, active buyers of their products. Joining us today, a veteran of the broadcast marketing industry and a founder of a very, very fascinating organization called Radio Results. Joining us today, John Perras. John, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Randy. It's really nice to be here.
Great to have you here. Listen, I brought you on the show to discuss how advertisers can closely target clients because, again, all of this confusion with social media. But before we get to the message, I always like to hear about the messenger. What's your background in marketing and advertising?
40 plus years in radio. I started off as a rookie working for a big rock station in Toronto called Q107, worked my way up through there, worked in various management positions at different broadcast companies throughout Canada. Last main gig was working with Stingray as their corporate sales trainer across Canada, built a sales training company, and now have a new company called Radio Results.
So this career in advertising and broadcasting, it might stick. I guess it will. Listen, with the arrival of social media, what has changed in the advertising world? A lot, obviously, but from your perspective.
Most people, if you're like me, most people hear or read or see something and they pick up their phone and immediately Google it. So Google, Facebook, and all the social media out there has been a big boon as far as advertising goes. And a lot of advertisers have come out of the traditional mediums of print, radio, and television, moving all their budgets over to social media. Once there, they didn't necessarily see the lift. So some of them are coming back, going back to traditional media. But there's a lot going on as far as social media goes. And if you're an advertiser, you do have to be there.
Through all of this time, 40 plus years in the business, you've stayed in the broadcasting field, specifically radio. Talk to me about why.
Radio is a great companion. It's a wonderful source for news and information, discovering new music, those wonderful DJs, and it's all free. It's also a medium that when you sell the advertising to advertisers, if you know what you're doing, you get successful campaigns that work. They get a great return on their investment. You build lifelong relationships. And there's another element that deals back to the Eagles, and we call the radio industry, and I'm sure it's not just radio. It is very much Hotel California. You check in, but you never leave.
One of the things, and I have a background in radio and broadcasting too, and one of the things that always fascinated me about radio is the ability to create theater of the mind, probably better than any other medium. Do you agree with that? Both from the content and the advertiser.
Oh, 100% so. Good creative done properly will create people to take action. There's an old saying, share of voice equals share of mind, which leads to share of market. So it is very much theater of the mind, and it's not expensive to utilize.
So for businesses today, there's so many, I'm sure, business owners that are listening right now, and probably many of them that have gone through, that chainsaw of social media. It is complicated, especially for older gentlemen like me. But all businesses today, I think, feel like they're kind of just throwing darts when they're doing social media. I hear from business owners all the time that they've tried social media campaigns and they're really not working. Is it the sheer volume of the messages competing online?
It's the volume, but there's more to it than that. The traditional mediums of print, radio, and television have so-called designated amounts that you need to spend to be effective and to utilize the medium properly. In social media, it's a bottomless pit. You're going to be lured in by eyeballs that you don't normally get, and how many you can attract, real or non, close to you or halfway around the world. The problem is that with radio, you only need 30 commercials a week. With digital, you could spend all of your entire budget and never be satisfied and never get the lift that you think is going to come. So there's a lot of advertisers that have gone off to, without saying it, shiny new thing back in the day and not got the results and have come back. But you do have to utilize social media. If you're a business and you don't have a website, you're dead. So you do have to be there. It's just a question of maybe 20 or 25% of your budget, but not 125% of your budget.
So, I mean, I know that radio has always worked very hard to have, demographics and numbers of actual listeners. They're not bots. These are actual people who are listening to the radio station and the rest of it. But so, an advertiser goes to a radio station and says, I want to buy this particular demographic and here's my product. But you've now taken that to the next level. You've developed a process to really drill down for radio stations. How specific is the data collection process you're creating, and what have you been able to find out?
Well, the data that we collect is very specific. It shows age, it shows location of listener, it shows demographic, it shows what they like about your programming and what their listeners' shopping habits are. And this is key. Are you buying a new car in the next 6 months? Do you eat fast food 1 to 3 times a week? Are you going to be renovating this spring? All of this, Randy, is designed to give radio station proof that the listeners are the actual advertisers' potential customers. And we do it in a 3-minute survey on your phone by texting a number. It's so simple. We should have been doing this years ago. It gives salespeople the proof that they can go into advertisers and show that magical information that, yeah, our listeners are buying your products.
So, I mean, as drilled down as much as, and I know when the producers reached out to you and we had our initial call, I was fascinated in finding out that if I had owned a truck dealership, and Ford F-150s are a big seller, that you can actually extrapolate from the data how many of those people from the survey may potentially buy an F-150 in the next year.
Great point. We just did a survey in a mid-sized market north of Toronto. The station had 250,000 listeners. We asked them what kind of car they're going to buy in the next 6 months. Is it going to be a car, a pickup truck, an EV, an SUV, etc.? Right? Over 20,000 listeners said that they're going to buy a pickup truck. Now, in the next 6 months, just imagine if you're a salesperson and you go into a store that sells pickup trucks and say, we want you to become the go-to store for selling pickup trucks to our listeners. And here's the proof. Our listeners are buying pickup trucks.
It is just absolutely fascinating to be able to drill down that closely. I mean, radio advertising has always worked, but it's being able to find out down to that detail. That's impressive. Do you see this as becoming kind of the next stage of focused marketing?
Absolutely. First of all, there's not a radio station on the planet that can't benefit from utilizing this information, because advertisers, especially in light of all the social media we talked about, they walk around saying, I know 50% of my advertising works. I just don't know which 50%. Well, there's no guessing here. Radio can work 100% of the time if it's done with the 3 R's of reach, repetition, relevance. But having the proof that the listeners are your potential customers and doing a campaign right, it's not going to work 75% of the time. It'll work 100% of the time.
This I gotta say is, in this digital age, this really kind of brings it back to, I guess, finding out, who are the right bums in the seats on the bus, and which bus am I going to buy? And I think that this is something that probably is going to interest a lot of people, because they're really looking to target their advertising dollars. Companies only have so much, and if they spend and it doesn't work, that's tough and that's challenging. Listen, one of the questions that I ask all the guests here on Informed, no obligation whatsoever, but if people do have questions, I know you're busy. But if people do have questions or want to reach out, could we put your contact information here on the page?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn as well, or john@radioresults.ca. Easy to reach me, and I'll be glad to speak to anybody, be it radio or an advertiser.
All
Glad to
right.
help.
Thank you again so much for for coming on the show. This has been really enlightening. I'd like to have you come back on maybe in a future show and talk about how this is beginning to roll out and expanding, and what kind of results that you're seeing. So thanks again.
Look forward to it. Thanks for the time, Randy.
Wow, that is, that is really, really fascinating in the world of advertising and marketing dollars that are so scarce these days. Something certainly to check out. I'm Randy Taylor. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today. On behalf of everyone here at Informed, have an amazing day and be well.